we go. I'm just going live on Facebook now. And here we go. It's a bit slow this morning.
Looks good.
There we go. Over to you.
Well, we are delighted today here at Lit Balm to have Freeman, Nathan McClain, and John Hennessy reading with us. And of course, as usual, we'll have our open mic at the end. Don't forget, if you're on Facebook, give us a thumbs up, because I know several people told me that they wouldn't be able to make it to the Zoom, but they'll be on Facebook. And yeah, it'll also be archived on YouTube later, probably Tuesday. So before we commence with our features, as is usual, Cassandra and I will read a short poem and then we'll move on. So here's Cassandra. She's an award-winning prose poet and international expert on prose poetry. Her prose poetry is widely anthologized and has been translated into Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. Cassandra has published more than 30 books and is currently writing an illustrated book of prose poetry on the Hiroshima Maidens with funding from the Australia Council and the Victorian government. Cassandra co-wrote prose poetry and introduction and co-edited the anthology of prose poetry. She just had an acceptance from Princeton U Press for her new book on ekphrasis poetry. She is commissioning editor for Wesley magazine and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia.
I love your accent. It's great. It's perfect. Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm excited about ekphrastic poetry. I've got a message on Facebook, so hit me up with your ekphrastic poems, because if I can fit them into a chapter, who knows, I will try. So I have an ekphrastic poem to read today. It's based on Rossetti's The Changer of Hearts. And yeah, this is how it goes. You are naked in bed. I stand at its base. I'm firebrand angry, flame driven. In fever heat, you press me between your pages like a butterfly whose papery wings are smoothed and pinned. For 20 minutes, our scarlet words are arrows in flight until in white-hot silence we have sex. The noise of rhythmic thrusting fills the space. My hair floats Titian under a bright hairband as you smooth it from my breasts to touch flushed nipples. We are flesh and breath, two bodies, searching for an end point. And now I would like to introduce Mark Vincennes. So please join in. And there's an exciting announcement some of the way through. So Mark Vincennes is an Anglo-Swiss American poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He has published over 30 books of poetry, translations, and fiction, including more recently 39 Wonders and Other Management Issues, The Pearl Diver of Urunmani with White Pine Press, A Splash of Cave Paint with Spite and Dival, and a chapbook, An Alphabet of Last Rites with Chavina Barber. The King of Prussia is Drunk on Stars is forthcoming in April 2024 from Lavender Ink. Mark is also a prolific translator, and he's translated from, I hear you say, German, Romanian, and French. He's published 11 books of translation, most recently, An Audible Blue, Selected Poems 1963 to 2016 by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist Klaus Mertz. And guess what? It's not just Klaus Mertz who's award-winning. It just won the 2023 Massachusetts Book Prize for Translated Literature. So it's an award-winning Mark Vincennes, as well as an award-winning Klaus Mertz, the double award winners. His own work, Mark's, has been translated into many languages, including Japanese, Chinese, Russian, French, Italian, Romanian, Greek, German, and Icelandic. He is currently working on a novel entitled The Age of Occasions. Vincennes is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. Here we go, everyone. He has lived all around the world, from Brazil to China, to Iceland, to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but now lives on a farm in rural Western Massachusetts, overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, Melville's inspiration for Moby Dick, where there are more black-tailed jackrabbits, cinerous shrews, and pied-billed grebes than people. Now, that was a tongue twister. I like your cinerous shrews. If you can tame them, Mark. Please read for us, award-winning translator.
Oh, this is from a new book I'm working on called Spells for the Wicked. In the hands of a holy Roman citizen. 17 denarii from a Genovese, 12 talents from a bald yet hairy Ostrogoth, 9 silvers from Imperial Tokin, 3 bronze pelts from the Antilokos, in exchange for an ivory tusk and a tiny red ruby. I too was acquired by the Roman Empire, where once, in the center of the Colosseum, my Latin ancestor stood, a trident and net in hand, facing the crocodiles on one side, the lions on the other. Meanwhile, a barbarian queen approached at full tilt, her chariot tearing through the sand, as if she had been a stunt double in Charlton Heston's Ben-Hur. Or perhaps my ancestor had been a parsimonious git, a wheeler-dealer, just like my immediate pater familia, who once, when in a corner, would inevitably pull out his dice and toss and toss and toss until the numbers added up. You could count on him to go on for the sweet deal, but build a little buffer on his side. And then when through, the world became his very own oyster, even though he loathed them, far too oceanic for my alpine tongue. And he tongued and he nibbled and lip-synced, his mouth full of perfunctory notes in exchange for a mouthful of compote and a lap dance. Anything for the wife and kids back home. And across the planet he soared in search of profits, polecats and polemic, ending up in bars and restaurants on the edge of the known, in the jungles of Indonesia, the turquoise shores of Pacific islands, the white sandy beaches of polyamorous nation states. They say on his wedding night, he left the conjugal bed and wound his way through the streets of Tokyo, shored into a Yakuza dive, the Shinjuku wave, where Kirosaku was waiting with 3 Osakan pearl divers stripped to the waist and ready to submerge into their element. Angie wound her way through the wet streets of Tokyo and found him, toe of the nymph, sitting on his lap and feeding him peanuts. She slapped him around the head, tore the martini from his hand and downed it, 3 olives and all, or maybe they were pickled onions. Still, he laughed on, teased the knees of Yuko. Aiko, on the other hand, reached behind the bar and pulled out an ancient German Luger, loaded and ready at the hilt. "We're gonna take you," she said, and true to her word, shot what appeared to be lukewarm sake into Angie's tired face. A Polynesian bouncer by the name of Taito appeared behind the curtain, flexing his tattoos, and ordered our pater to pay up or get out. And thus he did, staggering home in the rain, propped under Angie's angry umbrella. Like any Roman citizen in a bind, he professed his fealty to his young wife and swore this was just a momentary lapse of his senses. Marriage, after all, was no laughing matter, but Angie's silence had the last word in the Tokyo twilight. Rome, of course, was not built in a day or two, but grew into all its tentacular proportions with cold steel, clear-headed military precision, and millions of feet, hands, and mouths, all prodded in the direction of Agrippa's pantheon. Had he lived in the era of Hadrian, Paternoster should most certainly have been a fish sauce trader, crossing the Mediterranean 100 times or more in search for the fishiest business partners, even miles from the coast. It is known, family lore, that our menage was descended from a long line of Etruscans or Phoenicians, and unhappy with their Roman usurpers, headed upwind into the mountains to put distance between them and Rome. And having settled here far from the madding Yelp, they farmed goats, sorrel, and blueberries, yodeling on their own gumdrop of alpine heaven, perfecting, believe it or not, the art too of cheese, curds, and whey, churning a tidy profit for the displaced mountain folk, until centuries later, they became the biggest goat cheese makers in Retia Prima, and are thus once again offered full Roman citizenship. Villas overlooking lush green valleys rose up in the Alps. Steam baths steamed, toilets had dolphin armrests and pine-oiled apple wood seats. A panoply of gods cast their golden eyes upon the coniferous trees, the mules, donkeys, and oxen headed to market, the early pâtissière and the well-oiled bordellos lined the colonnade of paved mountain avenues. As a full Roman citizen, Pater Nostra was afforded all rights and as a result could never be crucified, even though he strode through the killing fields of the southern plains. All he wished to do was stand head high in the forum and proclaim his holy lineage. And yet, far into the centuries, crossing the equator 100 times, our Pater, who art in heaven, hallowed be his own name in deeds and misdeeds, struck deals with men of low morals who reaped and raped their lands, all for the glory of empire. And of course, later on, honeymoon in Hawaii at a luau, I was inserted into this fine, fecund universe, all of Tokyo's sins forgiven, and in a vision, the new world appeared to our Pater Noster. It has been said it took 17 martinis and even more Cuban cigars, and in the end, gladiator he claimed he was, remained the last man standing. In his dream, a mangy lion pounced upon him and tore his face and body into thin strands. A herd of stampeding elephants finished him off. The dream, he surmised, was one of Hannibal crossing the Alps to erase the once glory of Rome. And yes, a foreign devil dwelled in the rafters of his own windy attic. I am much more than this, he sometimes said when drunk or tired or nearly dead. In his sepulchre, his second wife, Pixie, an Ostrogoth, placed his ashes within a plastic heart. I remember her gently caressing the surface in which was engraved, "In the end," as is the fate of many Romans. Looking back, we all turn to stone. So that was a quite long one. I hope you forgive me for going on for far too long. But I'm now delighted to introduce Rue Freeman, who is an award-winning Sri Lankan and American writer, poet, and activist whose work appears internationally. Her recent full-length works include Bon Courage, Essays on Inheritance, Citizenship, and a Creative Life, just out this year, and Sleeping Alone Stories. Her previous works include the novels On Sal Mull Lane and A Disobedient Girl, and the anthologies that Rue edited, Extraordinary Rendition, American Writers on Palestine, and Indivisible, Global Leaders on Shared Security. Rue's poetry has appeared in Poetry, American Poetry Review, Poetry Northwest, and elsewhere. Rue teaches creative writing in the US and abroad. Welcome, Rue.
Hey, thanks. And I'm hoping you can't hear the horn that's going off in the background now. Somebody's car horn is going off.
We can't.
I also hoped that I could sort of lurk in the background until all the wonderful poets had read, and then people will be sated and not really paying attention to mine. But now it seems like I'm going to have to start off here. So I'm calling this reading sort of around the world. So I selected poems that are set in different places, including the United States, of course, but from other places. The Winner. The young Georgian named for his country left as though he were in a Russian novel. but not the one he had been born into, with the smell of the underground press buried deep in the city, pushing stories about how things really were for his family and other animals, whose names rose easy to his tongue in the half-light gift of sun, moon, stars, and bombs falling over a mother bearing a dagger in one hand and Eve's fruit in her unsheathed palm, slap on his face. Those constant consonants in tight formation seal the perforated jugular, hidden from plain sight at an equal depth in his throat. His vowels, like his truths, too precious to barter, how he had heard happens in a Western world a cousin long ago had told him about, before handing him a family business, taught with guns, zip lines, women running through it all, silky and polluted with the hopes of invading troops who occupy the sulfur springs, cleanse themselves of sins and leave him holding wet towels. He grew to love the larger canvas of their loves, their hates amidst their wars, and peace, though neither came to him in the same way, summoned of his own accord, though each devoured his dreams, placed him center and last. He can rise out of the American poet's bed and leave just like that, potent in his ability to do this thing. Inflict something for a change of heart, for a sense of how it feels to own everything, to be willing, as they once had been, to lose. The poet dies, for Ashraf Fayed. We speak for a poet condemned to death, a venue grand in size, high rafters, stage set, young voices loft high, the old know of what they speak and so speak low. Love held fears so the heart be faint of heart, now uttered here. Such hope pressed firm into the frozen earth. Listen, these are the prayers of our uncommon faith. It is not sadness, but mania that overcomes us, strangers nailed by cold into a greater darkness. A man's eyes reflect vertical lines. He holds them like pagers, though he has no ink. The poet, upon whose numbered breaths the anvil of our future has been forged, stands still. The governor. All the women spoke, he said later in his Scottish accent, of hats. It must be necessary in these parts to cower from the sun, though not from rain. In the rain, everyone dances. In the kitchen where great pots simmered communal servings of pig butt and bone, there were no children. Somewhere they walked assured of their place on this land, assured of who did not belong. In the back room where men gathered, don't mess with Texas-sized, loud for the occasion and scrubbed clean of cow, dung, bullshit, blood, spatters of calves taken from the uddered underneath of new mothers, frisky disbelief at mirror image disappeared. It was in that back room, in the time after, that the newcomer, fresh supplied with new digs at the black man in the White House, had spoken of consoles and bullets. We five at the edge of the ranch in an unchilled airstream held our own preferences, wine aerated into being better, real tequila pimped up. We wanted to get the story right. The sunset delivered, an earth-shun moon rose. Hunched close, we each imagined the weight of that gun he had held in our hands, the scent of a revolver newly bought. The smell of it is how our friend passed on the lure. You don't have to aim, the race junkie had said. You point and it blows the fucker's head off. It was not hard then to imagine what that might feel like, how it would feel to blow that fucker's head off. Two fathers. When the first shots fired over Firth of Forth, I was not there. A boat he may have had a hand to build, this man, our common bond, sank in a foreign language. I was not there to see where the children were taken before, later, in places I know now, Glasgow, Greenock, Aberdeen, Dundee, Clydebank, Edinburgh. I was not there, I cannot say, if she helped in auxiliary, factory, field. Did he wait for her return, a boy, lone son, the first? Somewhere the Merlin engines roared and a Messerschmitt crashed at Eaglesham. Capture was certain among the captives, hosts made hard by war. I hear D-Day was rehearsed on our shorelines, Rome, Lochfin, Eigg, turned brave and shelters designed that bore a family name I did not own yet. We were born a decade apart, one into war and one in the after. He grew into fame and I to wandering, knowing two different men we called father. Walking the ruins. As though Icarus succeeded not as himself, but as vessel filled, amber brimful of light, see him spill over two equal towns, split by a mountain I must look down upon. So high are we on this perch, so high is he on what he needs, weed that I am, difficult to eradicate, a joint punishment beside the roofless church. How its stone walls flick the lithe girls scaling, how they fall to their knees, rock back on narrow ankles, how they try once more their iridescent failure, their repeated reminder they are as I am, praying from the fringes, hardly seen even when I leaped as he did, son of Daedalus, a deadly cold creeping as it will in any not home country. Today we jostle to glimpse Fiorelli's labors, hard beds built sound for the lupanar and paneled walls that tell us Euplia paid with her life to enjoy 2,000 beautiful men. The Romans fulfilled themselves exactly as the Indians did. In the brief minute we are given to pass through, observing pruned pruriens, how wretched these beds, no wonder their empire could not last. A quick imprint of the Kama Sutra carries me clear. Pompeii recedes, the bed is mine, and I have chosen the fire. Hard to love. Hard to love, I am hard to love. I've heard it said that I am hard, so very hard to love. There are no diamonds between my thighs. Personally, I'd find that hard to bear. I'd be thinking about those stones, where they came from, blood or war or guts, who paid for what with what. And it's those kinds of thoughts, that uneasy thoughts, that make me so hard, so very, very hard to love. And wouldn't it be so nice if I could only say, I feel your pain. I wish I could be different, make it easier for you. If I could only shut up sometimes, but there are 1,000 other hurts coursing through my body looking for a way out. And that's what powers these thighs, baby. And that's what rises from these lips. And if that is not a love you can feel, and if that is not a song you can hear, then I wish, oh, I do, that maybe you could stop trying so very, very hard to love me, because it is also very tiring for me to have someone trying around all the time. There's that song I could sing. It gets stuck sometimes in this ribbed cage full of children and bad food and memory. And the voice, when it comes, is about the wrong stuff, you know, uncomfortable shit, like blood or war or guts, or who paid for what with what. And what the fuck are you saving your bullets for? Then, of course, there is safe play that is not about the cedar bark under the swing sets in a neighborhood of mowed lawns and spring petunias. It's about not saying, of staying quiet, of knowing places and hierarchies and other fairy tales that serve Goliath. And that, too, that kind of 2020 gets hard for people I've found who are trying so hard, so very, very hard to love me. I'm thinking now about the cruetsats on each table and Sarah, who couldn't shut up about the Milltown workers who showed up at dawn to fill them up so wealthy, liberal, co-ed motherfuckers didn't have to shake so hard when they seasoned their eggs. And I'm thinking of her now, alone with 2 children on the family farm in Vermont and a dad who just passed. And man, I bet she's considered hard to love too. I'm thinking of Sarah and how hard I love her. Hard to love. I am hard to love. I've heard it said that I'm hard, so very hard to love. This is the last one. Winestopper, Lisboa, for John. Ferry me close. There's a restaurant on the other side of uncontested waters. Both banks belong and use a single currency. The couple asks for the same wine each time, wine named green for its sweet promise of a dizzy love, granted freedom to slip smooth down throats open wide the way hope exacts its unconscionable price. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Fantastic. Now we're delighted to hear from Nathan McClain, who is the author of 2 collections of poetry, Previously Owned from 2022, which was long listed for the 23 Annual Massachusetts Book Award, and Scale 2017, both from 4-Way Books. Nathan is a recipient of fellowships from the Frost Place, Sewanee Writers Conference, Breadloaf Writers Conference, and a graduate of the MFA program from writers at Warren Wilson College. He is a Carvey Cunham Fellow. His poems and prose have appeared recently and are forthcoming in Plume, Poetry Anthology 10, The Common, Guest House, Poetry Northwest, and Zocalo Public Square, among others. Nathan teaches at Hampshire College and serves as poetry editor of the Massachusetts Review. Welcome, Nathan.
Thank you so much, Mark. Mark and Cassandra, deeply, deeply appreciative for the opportunity to be here. Grateful to be able to read with these wonderful writers who are also just very, very dear to me as well. I'm going to start with a couple of poems that are not in the new book, and then I'll read a couple of poems from the book, and then we'll hear from John, whose work I so adore as well. This poem is entitled, I Could Hardly Tell. I could hardly tell one tree from another until, up close, I touched the trunk, thick, gnarled, as one might expect, with 2 fingers, the way one might search for a pulse, where the bark had been badly scarred, not by a woodpecker, but by young lovers, the boy flashing his pocket knife, persuaded, even as I have been, of the tree's rhetoric, or perhaps the permanence of affection. So, in some way, one could feel nearly kin to it. Community garden. Because of history, I thought I might only feel one way about working a piece of land, even as we now have a small plot of land to work, me and my wife. I can tell I've been working because my lower back hurts, but that could also be from bending improperly, or perhaps the cost of getting old. I say we have, but my plot is a rented plot, the way one might rent an apartment, a car, borrow a library book. No one had tilled the plot before me, so the ground was often as hard as the tending itself, which required breaking. Climbing along the cattle panels I curved between T-post are long beans, cucumber, black futsu squash, and tomato, among other plants. More than enough. In a plot nearby, a child might be seen clearing weeds or tipping a watering can. With all these children, birds, rabbits, and plants, one might think my plot its own ecosystem, to be sustained and kept. So I give it water. I hack back weeds pushing up like stalks of corn, though should it be left to me, deciding what should live there, if not the slow opening marigolds or dandelion greens? Because my plot is rented, in October, we must collapse the cattle panels, cinder block, T-post, and wooden stakes, the way any government or kingdom under the right oversight can be collapsed and put away. Just look how easily it all comes down, like the last set pieces of a stage play. The half moon, cardboard cloud and stars, a handful of leaves, the small section of picket fence. At the park, a boy's birthday party. No surprises here, really. Not the plastic white cutlery or the fancy glass bowl. Cubes of pineapple and Bosque pear, naturally red, that no one, thank the Lord, has thought yet to spike. Each boy, blindfolded, spun in place and shoved down the piñata's path with a bat he can barely lift. The piñata, star-shaped, tasseled pink at its ends, seems accurate. At this age, in their limbs inarticulate as the smoke of catfish or pork ribs that hiss on the park grill. They hardly notice the sun's descent. It's getting late, I think, to say, as someone's father knots the blindfold over my eyes, fits the bat in my hands. In my ear, the boys shriek, and there, the star, snagged in the oak of my mind, the rope swaying almost gently. How, even dizzied, do I step towards it? What you call it. Not my usual route to the market, past the railroad tracks, then past Grace Episcopal Church, its courtyard empty. No men clasping hands as though agreeing finally to the difficult terms of some treaty. So I would not have known it was a peach tree unless the person who planted it or someone on the street told me. Which is not to say its fruit didn't look peach-like. It did. Rather, I didn't read it as such, didn't know what I was seeing really. From where I stood, the fruit perfect and young and heavy, at least heavy enough to bow the branches, though hardly ready yet to eat. Ripe, one might say, which, true, is more precise, precision, a thing of value. Not that the fruit cares what you call it, or stands for anything other than what time can make of some small human intervention, is no piece of literature. The peach was simply a peach, and there for the taking, which is often said of an object that has gone unwatched for too long, susceptible to trespass, which happens first in the mind, and happened first because of fruit, or so says the good book if you believe in such things. Knowledge, which a poet once called historical, too, a trespassing of sorts, the proof of which perhaps best shown in how one might punish a slave who had been taught to read the word beauty or toil or rest secretly and by firelight. There are things nearly impossible to forget, having so trespassed, having badly needed to see up close this tree, fixed in place, its fruit dangling there within reach, though not the same as being offered. Tenderness, I have learned, is only one test of whether some fruit has fully ripened. You press the flesh right here. But for me, that would mean crossing half the yard, the way a paper boat might be pushed by wind across a pond. Obad ending with a pacemaker. It's so easy from the hotel's 12th floor to see the sheet of ice splinter, then drift like continents on the river. From this height, the snow flurries, doesn't seem to fall at all. Maybe it's the trucks delivering meat packed in salt, I imagine, gliding slowly along that make me think back on the La Brea bakery truck driver whose heart quit at the intersection of Melrose and Western. Paramedics listened to his chest, blew and blew into his mouth before he was wound to a stretcher, rushed away. The truck, all its freshly baked baguettes left, and I was almost certain stolen. Who knows if anything can really be saved? Not you or me. Not the heart, unreliable little engine it is. It shouldn't be a surprise when I say the La Brea bakery truck driver that I'm thinking of you. Just two more poems. Love poem. The tennis match was still on, and while some watched, some sat around and shucked oysters, cut them from their shells, the score going on in the background, love, 15, 30, etc. A peculiar system. The what did I know? Certainly not the name of either player, how many games were left, or what each white boundary line meant. Only that love meant nothing in tennis. Or didn't exactly mean nothing, but rather to have nothing, zero. One hardly thinks of love as bad, except when tennis is on, when one considers a score is being kept. I've certainly seen this to be true more than once. I'll say love is no good, but context is important. Okay. My love and I sipped bourbon late one night. She had been pregnant with twins, belly a greater zero. Some said love made them, and that was true. And after, some said, well, at least you still have love, and that was also true. And this last poem is entitled Love Elegy with Sunoco and Rand McNally Road Atlas. My wife and I do a fair amount of road tripping, so it seemed appropriate to have a poem for her in this book that captured that. And thank you all again for your attention. Love Elegy with Sunoco and Rand McNally Road Atlas. Over there are fields of yellowed grass and trees, all nondescript, and a snow mound shrinking, though there is no boy tussling in the snow, no leaves stuck to his thick wool cap and mittens, no, not in this weather, no mother looking sternly on. No, nothing like that exactly. Just the field, the inevitable turning of leaves, a sound I can almost feel, even with the window raised, or so I'd like to believe, though I can't quite feel it. Not the way I feel your hand touching the bag of dried mango at the same time as mine. Oh, the luck of that. And luck, too, that no one has struck a deer for many miles now. The bare road, what isn't slumped there, the same kind of proof as the needle, bright and trembling just above the E on the fuel gauge, which points to a specific emptiness, one surely necessary to address, though I can see with increasing clarity all that's left the frame, everything already in the past tense, even us, and simpler that way, to ignore the cold and the cost slowly climbing at the pump right before the nozzles click, or the soft light of the phone and your face so briefly lit and filling up the window. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Nathan. Wouldn't we love to have that face filling up the window? And next we have John Hennessy, who is the author of 3 collections: Coney Island Pilgrims Bridge and Tunnel and Exit Garden State, forthcoming from Lost Horse Press. And his poems appear in many journals and anthologies, including The Believer, Best American Poetry, Harvard Review, The Huffington Post, Jacket, The New Republic, Poetry, The Poetry Review UK, Poetry at Sangam in India, Poetry Ireland, and the Yale Review. John is the translator with Ostap Kin of a new orthography, selected poems by Serie Jardin, finalist for the PEN Award for the Poetry and Translation in 2021, and winner of the Derek Walcott Prize in the same year. And the anthology Babin Yar, Ukrainian Poets Respond, part of the Harvard Library of Ukrainian Literature. Their translations, that is, John and Ostap, appeared in the New York Review of Books, Times Literary Supplement, and the New Statesman. Set Change and Drukojic's selected poems in translation is forthcoming from New York Review Books. And John is the poetry editor of The Common and teaches at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, just an hour and a bit away from me. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Cassandra, for inviting me. But let's take a second to look at the chat. Do you all see that? What Rue just wrote is about Nathan's reading. That was really, really beautiful. Each poem felt like the best one. And then there was another best following it. Okay, I would say the same about your reading, Rue. Rue and Nathan are 2 of my dearest people and 2 of my favorite poets. It's an honor to read with you too. I'm going to start with a translation that Ostap Kin and I did, a poem by Yuri Andrikovich, a contemporary Ukrainian poet. It's called Color Film. As if from darkness, from gloom, from nothing, this moment is sewn through us like a thread, from above our shoulders, from primeval night, a shining river, a flying light, onto the screen, onto a white calm, onto a cloth, onto the ground of spatial fields. It flies through the eyeless dark. It's as voluminous as seed or salt. And in this theater, where light's been banished, where even street light fades away completely, other light channels vibrate and reflections wander through the eye. The curtains open up, the wings of a gate. The screen shifts our eyes and souls so that we reach new perspectives, blown by the wind into the changing of colors, landscapes, rooms. We touch fire, earth, water. But no, not those, and not like that. There's a wall here. The screen's always a wall. So when the shades are opened and it's over, daylight pours through the aisles. We walk as if from underground corridors. We reach for cigarettes in our pockets. We exit like a flood, like a tide, and start talking again. Oh, reality, blinding and sublime. We learn to love. We learn to see. The rest of the poems that I'll read are from a collection I finished in June, Exit Garden State. It took me 10 years to write, and it started out as a quiet meditation on family life, middle age, the nest about to empty. Then my marriage ended in a spectacular fashion, and the book changed a bit. This is Which God Were You? I've never read this aloud. Which God were you? The one who bathed me in the kitchen sink when I was small enough to fit? Who made the camel kneel and the cow low? Who drove the fish up the canal to spawn under piers that reeked of creosote? Who blessed and cursed me with the dream of fidelity? Who wore the ice caps like a fool's hat? Who drove the clown car? Who made a Calvary of sumac blasting through the pavement? Who blazed out with the Hanukkah candles before bed, then cut the Christmas lights? Who stroked me under the covers when the fever hit and sleep slept? Who reminds me I'm both father and son and split the sky unevenly between the day and night? Who covers darkness with a deeper dark? Who wakes me with the light? Bathe me with the light. Actually, Rue, I may have read that to you before, but it's certainly not to another larger audience. This is called Second Chance Dad. The second time my father gave me life, he pulled me from a coach's path. New York crossing, I stepped off the curb looking left, not right, near Dublin's Rotunda. Exactly the mercy work my sisters sent him for. Grief's traffic fumes, a useless creeping half-knowledge had dulled my sense. Dad, good in crisis, kept me fed, made room for pints, told stories, boosted me over the fence around Sheila Nagig, subject of my research. Imagine otherwise, the site off limits, retreat to books, hikes near the flat in Christchurch, where they'd already trysted, steeped in ignorance. What if I had avoided relatives, dead in Dublin, living in Clare, just poxed and red? Leaving the garden. Don't underestimate the power of the house. Keep it and keep the power. Or maybe you've always had the power, and so keep the house. Surround the garden with painted fire, a grove of burning maple trees that bend and close behind the one who leaves. Let them leave willingly, thinking another paradise grows outside archangel flames. Catalpa trees will spread above the silver birches, rise and flower, drop their pods on greener grass or richer soil, all real, no artifice, the constructs, contracts, whatever used to pass for life exposed. You'll keep the children past childhood, the children's children, yours at last. In another life, I joined the Hierophants of New Jersey, drink petrochemical winds swirling across Route 1, a new Delphi, speak their ethylene mysteries. Called back by my inexorable childhood, It becomes impossible to ignore my son's own strange gifts. Smokestacks stop smoking. Chimney fires burn green as pine, then flare out. Miracles like this don't happen back home in Massachusetts, so we pigeon feather for a message, begin initiation. Windmill camphor pots, magnesium mist our wrists and foreheads, burn sage, then sandalwood, then Palo Santo in blue ceramic bowls, bubble wrapped back from Sifnos. The singular past and several futures never go dark here. Even summer thunderstorms illuminate oil tank farms, destructive as divorce, and the vats speak with a rumbling of their swollen bellies, murky riddle. Don't go barefoot, there's a snake in the grass, and Orpheus sails in too late for the wedding. Wetlands make for wet hay. The boys receive instruction to draw forth superheroes, reckless as gods, cunning in combat with climate change. Vines snake across the refinery. The earth quakes and turns up old growth trees and ferns, a flask of Yenaver. Pour a gulp in the Arthur Kill for the guerrilla war dead of family battles. We calm our restless ancestral spirits, liberate them one by one from petroleum tombs. They fly off through ethylene vapor, escorted by heroes the boys create, better healed than Jason. Think a gracious Achilles, smoother than Perseus, tongue cuts cleaner than the sword. I embrace both boys as they grow to men, launch their barks, thank them through words stark as smokestacks for light they bring to senseless dark. I'm going to check my time because I don't want to go over. And this poem takes a little bit of introduction. It's called Lisbon, Transient Global Amnesia. Transient global amnesia is called such because it doesn't last long. It's global in that it affects both hemispheres and it's amnesia. I had this, my first trip to Lisbon 7 years ago. And I was with my then 18-year-old son, and I was getting ready for bed, and I came out of the bathroom and I said, "Hey, Nick, it's the weirdest thing. I don't know where I am." He said, "You're in Lisbon." What? What am I doing in Lisbon? I was at a conference. He said, "You're going to give a talk." This is like a nightmare, right? Because I'm giving a talk. I'm in Lisbon. Have I written this talk? And he said, "Knowing you, you probably have." But that was it. He said, "Okay, let's get you to the hospital." Anyway, it didn't last terribly long, but this documents a little bit of what happened then and what happened later when I was invited back by the same people at the Disquiet conference to give me a second chance. Okay. Lisbon, transient global amnesia. Lisbon, you've hurt me, tricked me into believing all the old lies. Delusions are endless. If you're looking for a mark, here I am doing horizontal stand-up in my hospital bed, joking against amnesia, transient, global, while my son stands by in terror. I told him it felt like an acid flashback. There was a buzzing in my brain, apologized for his chromosomes, forgot, and apologized again. His mother's shadow circled like a summoner, birdwing petulance, all the elegance of crow's flight, called back after she'd flown to an intrigue's heights. I filed my own missing persons report. Still I grouse, land me, because this is about you, Lisbon, because you waited for us, this return. My son's along and laughing, memory back, and every labyrinth open, your pink walls and pink streets I wake and dream down. At the end of every looted marble sidewalk, under the sky of Igreja de São Domingos, the clean halls and coffee roast, machine oil of Rocio Station, Alameda's uphill tracks, along the plane trees, and at the top of every Miradouro, I see you. Your hands take hold of me. I kiss your palms in this second, this new Lisbon, we plant and pave for each other. Okay. All right. I'm going to read two more. This one is very short. It's called After Alexandria. What an agony not to wake up next to you, not to have fallen asleep with your head on my chest. I made the bed quickly, as you did every day, sheets that smell still of your hair and skin, pillows, one that you took with you, take with you everywhere, sandalwood to the feathers. Coffee solo, but not alone, sun painting inside, landlord fixing, planing the screen door. And this note to you, who are here in my head, like a razor folded in its case. This one I also have not read in public. It's called 20 Questions. It's my last. Who is the you behind the you revive every morning and follow out into sun covered in fog, under white pines and over bridges crossing cold flowing streams, rivers of snow melt? When you board the train willingly with a letter that begins, I don't wish I'd never met you, do those double negatives negate your shame and suffering? When you plunge up the tracks, past the mountains of your lost New England Shangri-La, your past and family and dissolution of what mattered most to you, do you keep your eyes averted or do you watch the stopped mills and sullen bricks? When you see a raccoon on the flat factory roof, do you turn to your seatmate and include them in the marvel? Or do you stop up your ears with buds? And how will those buds flower? Into song, speech, music without words? What do you ask yourself as coffee brews in the back and you smell pastries in the microwave, the cafe car and its offerings, and you remember Malcolm X worked the cross-country trains? As did your father's uncles and their father and uncles and theirs and on back. How do you board and sit and watch and listen, leaving behind the ruined cities you track through? How do you keep quiet? How do you see the stilled cranes, the rusted machinery of childhood that is yet to be cleared, the human lives in buses and cars and on foot passing by still, or waiting at the bus stops, waiting at the stations of these former sites of industry and bust, these Camdens and Amboys, Bridgeports and Hollyoaks? Who are you? And how do you pass through? And how is it the best you can hope for is that someone writes, I don't wish I'd never met you. What have you ever done? What will you do now? Where and how will you get off? Beside which mill or factory? Which storage tank or coker unit? Where will you find the refinery intended for the soul? The one that burns through the self, that will finally change this world. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Very emotional at the end, yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, I can't help it. It's Jersey.
Sorry.
It's that Jersey thing.
Oh, Jersey. Well, thanks so much, Rue Freeman, Nathan McClain, and John Hennessy for this fantastic reading. What a powerhouse. I'm now delighted to hand over the mic to my co-host, Cassandra Atherton, to lead us through the open mic part of this show.
Hooray! We've got some wonderful people and we've got some of our favorites. So we usually kick off with John because it's a Wessick world wherever he is. So John Wombat Wessick, the stage is yours.
Never play 3-card Monte with a llama, especially one wearing a pink bridle and straw hat. The dealer tossed 3 cards from hoof to hoof. They came to rest face down, and I pointed to the middle one. He turned them over, and the queen was on my left. One more try? The llama sipped yerba mate through a metal straw, turned the cards over, and slid them on the cardboard box. Just $5. I pulled my earlobe. On the prearranged signal, the vice squad moved in. A cop the size of a linebacker tackled the llama and used 3 pair of handcuffs and a half-dozen zip ties to disable him. But that didn't prevent the officer from getting a juicy tablespoon of llama spit in the eye. When the cops shoved the llama into the police car, they banged his head onto the roof, much like a frustrated cook would pound a bottle of Damson plum ketchup on the counter to free the last stubborn drops. I knew budget cuts made the situation at the Bay City Zoo bad, but never would have guessed it was this desperate. Basking in a hot Santa Ana wind that blew like a negative ion hairdryer with 1100,000 RPM brushless motor, high-speed, low-noise thermal control, and magnetic nozzle, I strolled to the capybara exhibit. The world's largest rodents refused to earn their keep by doing headstands and somersaults. Instead, they lounged on beach towels beside a concrete pool. A 3-foot-high bonobo approached. She had small ears, a slight brow ridge, and pink lips. The dark hair that covered her body formed a natural part of her scalp. "Are you Morris Pillbottle?" I nodded. "Have you heard rumors about bonobos' sex lives? Well, they're all true." She undid the top button of her khaki work shirt. "How boo how, the panda would like a word. I'll be waiting for you afterwards." I followed her to the panda enclosure and through a gate in a chain link fence in the rear. Pines and eucalyptus shaded How Boo How's open air patio. A treadmill and rowing machine offered exercise. From the occupant's rotund body, he must not have used them often. "How do you like your bamboo?" How Boo How broke off a stalk and passed it to me. He had a black and white coat with black fur on his ears, eye patches, limbs, and shoulders. On the tree. I pointed to the Vote Now for How Boo How campaign posters stapled to the fence. Not many pandas run for mayor. It's about time they did. How Boo How took a bite of bamboo. His large canines indicated that this placid animal, descended from predators, might become one again. "What's your platform?" "I'll replace El Cajon Boulevard with bamboo forests to eliminate street prostitution and provide healthy snacks. But tell me about yourself, Mr. Pillbottle." "As you know, I'm a private detective. I came to Bay City after my last case to help the boys in blue by going undercover. The reward money will buy gas to get me to Bakersfield with enough change for a bag of potato chips. I need another job to get the rest of the way home." "Then you're in luck." How Boo How passed me an envelope. "I'll get straight to the point. I'm being blackmailed." And I will
Wow.
post a link to the story in the chat so you can read the rest.
I've left it as a cliffhanger. I don't know if you know my obsession with capybaras. They have a capybara cafe that has cats and capybaras, and they're so cute. Their hair stands on end when the cats lick them because they love the feeling of it. And if you have like a link for that hairdryer with that nozzle you talked about, I need it for this mop of hair. That was awesome, John. I'm reading the rest for sure as
Thank you.
soon as I get off this. Next, we have Linda, our poet laureate. Yay! I'm just going to leave it at that because I always get it wrong. What have you got for us this week?
Okay, it's a beat poet laureate.
Okay.
Okay. So this one's in parts, but it's not really too long. Red and purple polka dot balloon. 1. In the midst of calm, I see you holding a red and purple polka dot balloon. Your pace hastens as you run along a hedgerow of apple trees, releasing more string as if it were a kite. You turn to me and smile, hand me the balloon. 2. I notice the apples have not ripened. Your mouth speaks. I cannot hear your voice. Your lips mouth to me, I love you. I am enraptured, awe-stricken. I become stoic in the silence. 3. I do not know you, only of you. Instantaneous love is too sudden. 4. Sudden tosses me, sends me skyward. I slip down into the mouth of a cavern. I try to climb up, back to you, to the place I let go of our balloon. Our balloon soars high above, does not tangle or struggle. 5. Doubt and fear pulled me away from you. These cavern walls are not rugged nor smooth. I brush my fingertips with hope and find small ledges staggered inside its wall. I place feet and hands upon these, hoisting myself upward. Sunbeams shine in my eyes. 6. Clouds and azure sky await me, and the aroma of pine, hemlock, earth's mulch. Cavern's outer surface displays a smooth rock chute, a gradual decline. I slowly slide earthbound. The chute ends in a precarious position, a few feet above ground. 7. Upon descending, I fear the worst. Squinting, I see a man's arms outstretched. Attached to him is a red and purple polka dot balloon. I exit, am lifted, steadied, lowered upright upon my feet, gently set down, soles to earth. 8. Your right hand holds our balloon, your left is outstretched to help me up. I whimper softly as you tie the string around my belt loop. Embracing you is all that matters now. Tears flow down my cheek, wetting your bare shoulder. 9. I release our red and purple polka dot balloon. It soars aimlessly, attaching itself to heart-shaped cloud. I smile, realize that sudden is an okay way to love. I hold your hand as we stroll between the apple trees. Some fruit is ripe, red, luscious.
Well,
Thank
that
you.
was luscious. That was luscious and buoyant with its amazing balloons. And instantaneous love is too sudden. I love that. That's my favorite line, I think.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Next, we have the Sublime DeWitt from his chair. He may be Shakespeare today. He could be anybody. I don't know. But he always has something so fabulous for us. DeWitt.
Okay. In the spirit of ekphrasticcism, here's a poem based on my first and only trip to Europe, particularly Venlo, Holland. It's called Overloon Museum. The guide moves on and we follow. Some of us murmur, some give muted groans, but mostly we view in silence, passing from one mural-sized enlargement to another of photographs taken by Nazis themselves. How, we wonder, could such pictures be taken? In pride, a sadistic pleasure, in numb devotion to the process of recording? My wife has found my hand, and her grip tightens. Looking and not looking, we see the worst, then worse than the worst. The starving and diseased, the unknown victim who once had personality and name, bearded, hands behind neck, moments before being shot. Over and over, the victim's abject eyes, shining with appeal to us, the just spectators, somewhere, someday, while in cowardly ease, their killers taunt, joke, and pose. The yellow stars, boxcars jammed, hands reaching, gas chambers, showers by Krupp, holding 2,000 people at once. Corpses heaped, skin lampshades, industrial ovens like a bakery, mountains of eyeglasses, mountains of shoes, mind and heart cringe. One entire alcove features photographs of medical experiments, familiar icons all, over-familiar. The children deformed, the prisoner hanging dead in harness from high-altitude simulation, another held down in tank of ice water while an officer sits on the rim, timing death from exposure. One large photo I'd never seen before. Tiled infirmary, white-coated doctor at work, flanked by a second doctor, a nurse, and 2 SS in black. And on the operating table, a man strapped down, eyes rolling, the top of his skull missing, brains hanging out. 6 million, 3 million, 10 million, 1. The final exhibit rehearses the Normandy landings, Allied advance, liberation of southern Netherlands. Our guide wishes us well, shakes hands. Thank you. Yes, you are a good group. It is a privilege. Please come again. We can see the toll, a curtain call. He must go, he says. He has another group. The museum, I think, is dedicated to turning memory to imagination. As Tim O'Brien says, you can tell a true war story by its absolute and uncompromising allegiance to obscenity and evil. We strain for the sacred by contemplating the profane.
Wow. Okay, that was incredible. So powerful, DeWitt. What an amazing piece about spectators and looking and not looking. It's incredible. Love to read that one again off the page. Thank you. Thank you for reading. It was amazing. That chair produces some fine work, DeWitt. All right, Tony, you are up next. We've heard Tony read some great pieces before. So what do you have for us this week?
Am I okay to read 2 quite short poems?
Yeah, if they're short.
They're not really short. They're moderately short. But stop me if you think the first one's too long.
Okay.
Try to find the right energy after that, which was very thought-provoking. This one's called My Capital's Gone East. They're both about being trans. I say that I do write other poems, but they're both about being trans. My capital's gone east. Lighten up, ducks. Your Saturn future is assured. Any gendered Orientalism, now de facto legit. Not a colonist, no. This empire's wide. How long is a length of ribbon when every day frills? Deep desires near now, the sum of all your intimates. Overwhelm the Senate, manifest in a slip. Quantum forces bind you, a knot of silken pleasure, as antibody presence, sublimation accepted. Here where you wanted, a place you never knew. Strange tunes gild the treasure. This dawn must shine beyond you. And then the next one I need to say a little bit about is about somebody called the Chevalier d'Eon de Beaumont, who gave his name to Aeonism, which is a name given sometimes to some trans people that are cross-dress. And the Chevalier lived in the 18th century. He was a spy and a swords person. And at one point he whistle blew that the French were going to invade the English. So the French didn't like him. And to be able to return to France, to his lands, Louis XVI said that he had to cross permanently as a woman, and the Chevalier did. And he went back to France and some of the time, and one of Marie Antoinette's ladies' maids said that he was like a grenadier in ruffles. So you need to know that to know where I'm coming from. So this is called En Garde with the Chevalier d'Eon de Beaumont. O Chevalier, Chevalier, provocatrice to the unaware, of gold in your quicksilver, gender-gifted treasure. They'd freeze you in their stare, fixed with social mortar, court you to an urbane desert, another disciplined daughter. Mais non, my ruffled grenadier. Your subject objected, refused the role of petted deer. Quel courage, mon brave, ma chère. A blow to the bondage of kings. You're something else, again, again.
They were wonderful. What a wonderful pair of poems. Thank you so much
you.
for sharing. Really loved
Thank
it. Please
Thanks,
come
Jason.
anytime. We love to hear you read. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kurt Lovelace, you're up next. Let us see what fine piece you have for us today.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good, good, good. Okay, here we go. This piece is from my book, Halfway Between Everywhere. It's called Deranging Ann Carson. Deranging Ann Carson. Slowly, desires as round as peaches still bloom in me, in dreams I no longer ache for, what any he lets fatten. I whisk myself away to ponder in cities like Paris, wrap my legs around their hardness, and, sticky with love, stagger there like drunk sailors, French kissing under bright, calm boulevards of light. Keats's beauty makes me hapless, no, helpless, with its singular truth. Oh, I still wonder or wander as I rise mornings, laden with doubt about how I should begin again the approach to where there's nothing. Yet I see I'm writing this to be as wrong as possible about every unfucking imaginable thing. How human touch stains the garden's white gardenias, turns them bruised black as we too buckle and slide back into that same long dark.
Wow, that was sexy. I love it. I love it. And it's clearly the peaches lip balm. Some sexy peach action, I think, in the lip balms today. Thank you so much. Next, we have badass Cindy. She's going to read something for us in the Cindy style that we've been accustomed to and that we love so much. Cindy, Sister Sin.
Okay. Well, I've written about one or two ekphrastic poems in my life, mainly because I know nothing about art. So Henry's Ode to Ekphrasticism really doesn't apply to me. But since I've heard that ekphrastic poetry is all the rage these days, per Cassandra and Oz, I'm going to read it. And I probably read this one here before, so pretend you've never heard it. It's called An Ekphrastic Poem About an Ekphrastic Poem. So much depends upon ekphrastic poetry. Well, actually, nothing depends upon ekphrastic poetry. But this is just to say that I love the ekphrastic poems of William Carlos Williams on the artwork of Peter Bruegel, whose name I cannot for the life of me pronounce. Bruegel, not Williams. Nor can I remember whether the good doctor was referencing the elder or the younger, though I do know that he was Flemish, sort of like my throat feels when I first wake up in the morning. There is a lot of dancing going on in these colorful paintings of peasants, plus Icarus falling from the sky for the umpteenth time. But sad to say, there is a notable lack of plums.
That's amazing. You have to send that one to me. I love it, Cindy. It's like a self-reflective, ekphrastic poetry with all the famous ones everyone talks about in really cheeky ways. I absolutely love it. Send it to me. And our final reader is Bob from his kitchen. He has a dish rag. He's missing a tea towel. We know that he doesn't eat spicy food or very much garlic. We know he eats animal crackers by the box. But who knows what information he might have to finish our day for it to take us away for the rest of our evenings or mornings on his amazing poetic words. Bob, what have you got for us today?
Okay, this is a short piece, not a prose poem, which means it's not information, although everything is information. So, or as if the woman, or a shadow drawn thin, or an animal constructed and left inside its own, or a page filled with symbols that are more than decorative, but less than speech.
Wow, I love it. It's still good, even if it's not a prose poem, and I'm a prose poem aficionado. A page filled with symbols. Wow. Thank you, Bob. You should have a show from your kitchen, I feel like, and Cindy from her lounge room. So, Mark, it's back to you. We've had chair, we've had kitchen, we've had lounge room.
Yeah, we need Bob's show from the kitchen for sure.
We should do one from there. We'll just knock on the door and do a roving Lit Balm from Bob's kitchen.
But first off, let me thank Rue, Nathan, and John for a fantastic reading. Really appreciated it. Love that you were here, and you know, we'll be talking soon. And also, next week and next show is September 23. It's the Red Wheelbarrow Poets, Claudia Soria, John J. Trouse, Anton Yankovic, and Arthur Russell. Do join us for that. And to conclude the show, I'm just going to read one poem from my new award-winning Klaus Mertz collection that I translated the selected poems. This one's called, it's a prose poem, it's called Official Announcement. Yes, Mrs. Yowen, I admitted, since this morning, the 2nd of April, when I initiated the bankruptcy case against you, and you visited me personally to discuss a debt restructuring moratorium, I haven't had a wink of sleep. On my part, I too have unexpectedly fallen into bankruptcy. In short, I was taken aback on the spot by your uncanny resemblance to my wife, with whom I've been married over 20 years, mostly happy ones. Everything that binds me to you is almost fated from that first encounter and has confounded me to such an extent that I shall now require a reality check in order that we might both find a way back to ourselves again. To kindly request on my part a moratorium. Would you grant me, for the duration of the proceedings, to inconspicuously rest gently by your side? Thank you for letting us rest gently by your sides. And we shall see you September.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
This is Joe Green.
Hey,
I
Joe.
wanted to say hi to you and hi to John Hennessy, who I haven't seen in a very long time.
Thanks so much for joining us. Yeah.
Joe,
Yeah.
I've been writing to you in the chat to say hello.
Oh, okay. I didn't even notice.
Great
know.
to see you. Yeah, I figured.
All right. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Thanks so much, Joe. Really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for a wonderful show. And we'll see you on the flip side. Yeah. Lots of love and poetry, and have a great
Happy bars.
Thank you.
See you guys.